To start this recording, I want to just say that I have no intention of offending anybody. That's never my objective. My objective is to bring awareness to the people in the world, to the universal family that I'm part of. And that is all I will ever do. When we move into the food stuff that we take in, I'm not going to over elaborate on any of these people, maybe a few here and there. But if you look into the things that you're inquisitive about, you'll see that this all checks out. I just want to show you that the names of the foods we eat and the brands that make them all add up to something that should open your eyes. I'm going to try to not incriminate anybody or say anything bad about anybody, because whether we want to admit it or not, we're all just carrying over other people's leftover habits and traits. And until we actually take it upon ourselves to change, we're still going to keep following along with doing a lot of inhumane things. And that brings me to the food stuff. So how do we go about tackling such a huge enemy? The food itself isn't the enemy. It's the corporations who are benefiting off of keeping people sick and uninformed that happen to be the enemy of anyone who wants health and goodwill to others. So I guess the best way to try to start this is by starting in categories. Before I start on this little section, which is a few of the dairy companies, we have Borden, Velveeta, Kraft, and Land O'Lakes. I just have to make known that I could have made a show with many seasons, or at least a really long series out of this. And I had everything all lined up with the founders and the guys who started these companies, but it would have just taken way too much time to make the point. So I'm hoping you can see right in front of your eyes that this is exactly what's going on. And once we face it, we know that we have a lot of changes to make. I mean, just changing is scary, but doing it will be great once we do it. With our dairy category, first of all, we need to know that dairy products come from taking the milk of an animal and churning it into different products. Butter, cheese, yogurt, milk, things like that. That's what dairy is. So here are a few of the dairy companies. I'm going to start off the dairy category with Land O'Lakes butter. I'm using the name in this one of the CEO at the present time because Land O'Lakes came together from a bunch of different creameries that decided to make a company. And as time went on, there were different CEOs and different people in charge. But right now, at this current point in time, when things resonate with the way the word is, all information has to resonate so it can coordinate. With that being said, Land O'Lakes butter. I know how hard this is for some people to understand, but we have L and then B because this person's name is Beth E. Ford. We have Land O'Lakes. I assure you it's not a coincidence if you know what a fjord is. It's a long and narrow offshoot of the sea running between high rocky cliffs, like a pond or a lake, but it's called a fjord. And we have a person named Ford that does Land of Lakes. If you understand that a stick of butter or a block of butter or a tub of butter is the milk of a cow when it's used dairy, churned into a stick. So if you had a land, ongoing, lakes, you would have taken something's L, active base, active kinetic, expressed subject. You would have made land, a mass of butter, ongoing out of lakes. The as it lies active kinetic expression subjected from somebody. And you're talking about cows in this specific context. That's how it's used, and that's what it does. It's not me just having fun with it. I've said base expressed plus here for everything. Why do you think Bethlehem starts with Beth? Because it's where things start. Now, if you have Beth E. Ford, and she's moving her life, expressing her life forward, from a base expression plus here, you take the baby from the mother, you take the milk, you churn it into a product, and you make a block out of it, and you call it Land O'Lakes. Yes, she didn't do that, but she represents it because she's the constant expression ongoing, the CEO. Initials matter. People don't understand this stuff, but once they do, or if they ever do, they'll start really having breakthroughs in their life. Real ones, not stupid discoveries of space shit. Anyway, we'll move on to the next one. Moving on from that, we have Kraft. If you know what a craft is, C-R-A-F-T, it's when a constant to itself or an unseen is a reference, activated, form, force, or familiar, plus. That's with a C. That's why we have craftsman tools. We have a thing called witchcraft, because it's the unseen or the constant to itself as a reference activating a form, force, or familiar plus. That's craft with a C. Now we have a company that makes cheese and dairy products called Kraft. Yes, they have other products, but their main thing is the cheese. And cheese is a dairy product. It's kinetic. It's already actively active. Starts with a K instead of a C. Kinetic, reference, active, form, force, or familiar, plus. So if you're going to take something that's already a kinetic reference, active, and then form something plus from it, cheese. Do you see how that is? But starting with the K, see how that's kinetic or actively active as a reference, and you activate a form plus. Craft. It means you're taking something from something that's already there and doing something with it. That's craft. See how weird that is, but how much sense it makes? Moving on to Velveeta. If you know what velvet is, it's known to be smooth. If you have velvet with two E's expressed upon itself plus activity, it's saying smooth expressed upon itself. So therefore, that's where you get the idea of creamy. So it means creamy and smooth plus activity. Now, vital expression as it lies. Vital expression upon itself plus activity. Do you see how that is? Now, since we're taking it as a product from something, you're taking a vital expression as it lies, and that vital expression upon itself plus activity. So you're taking something and doing something with that expression plus activity. And it's cheese. And that's exactly what you do. Now, the last one of the cheeses is even more in your face. They have a happy smiley cow on their cover, and it's Borden, Borden. If you were born and then denied the right to see your child, look at Borden, the word born with its base ongoing reference separated with a DE and an N on the end for its notion or nature. When a mother is separated from their child so that you can take their milk and make something out of it. They show a father and his child on one side of the cheese package, and they show a cow and its calf on the other side of the package and make it look so happy. But behind the scene, they kill the calf many times, or they make it into veal, which is killing it. And then they use the mother for its product as long as they can, suck the life out of it, and then grind it up into meat and feed it to you. Do you think that that is actually a healthy practice? And that that's a healthy, energetic pattern going out into the world and for people to take into their bodies? I'm not sorry to say it isn't. And anyone who thinks so just can't put two and two together. And I understand, but it's time for us to really raise each other to a higher level. We don't have to sit and dilly-dally figuring out if we can possibly live without eating dead animals and their juices. Of course we can. We've been being fed like monsters because people want us to behave like monsters. Yes, we're part of the animal kingdom, but we're much more advanced than animals. People will say that on one hand, and then on the other hand, be holding a dead chicken like. That's not very advanced if you ask me. I'm going to try to move through these in category styles. So since we had cheeses, which is a dairy, and a butter at the beginning, we'll end with something that's more of a even more live culture, yogurt. And I'll do Yoplait and Dannon. You could do Oikos, and you could keep going through all of them if you wanted to, and you'll see that it just can't be a coincidence that those companies do a specific thing, and it does that specific thing. So as I've said before, the prefix Dan itself, just the word Dan in that three-letter combination DAN, means what is happening as it's active. Not done, not doing, all things. In that same kind of way, Dan, all things being done as they're being done actively. So Dan, to and from the activated or active notion. But with the word Dannon, it's D-A, two N's, ongoing notion. So you have to and from that active notion with two N's is a space, which you have something in a container, and it's live culture's ongoing notion. So it's dia, to and from, active notion, upon itself in this blank space, ongoing notion. And it happens to be a yogurt company, and we know that yogurt is a live thing that grows upon itself, an active culture. Now do the same thing with Yoplait. Vitally identified, ongoing, in place, as it lay, active, identified, plus. So it's already vitally identified, ongoing, in place, as it lies, active, identifying, plus. See how that is culturing. Yogurt. What a coincidence that those specific companies do those specific things. See how it isn't a coincidence. It's just, I'm the only person in the world who sees it. And it's in everything. It also tells you the truth about everything in the past, in history, and it can show you the future. And that's the freaky part of it. And I'm the only one who can actually see it. And since I've noticed for the years I've been trying to explain this to other people, they understand it when I explain it to them, but it doesn't just pop in their head because it's something that I actually saw and it's in me now. I'm trying to give it to everybody so that they understand that we can communicate like this. And it seems so simple because I'm using words we already know and that we've already talked about and been using our whole lives. But how else can we make subtle changes unless we do the steps of removing all the toxic stuff so that we can concentrate and come to a level where our ability to be conscious is higher than it ever was before? That's the problem we run into because most people just want it to happen overnight and they're not willing to put any steps into cleaning themselves up. And that is a necessary step to happen first. So those are 2 yogurts and we'll move on. Sorry for any of the tangents that I have. I'm just being me. Now going in from the dairy into condiments and sauces. A lot of the companies like Kraft have merged with places like Heinz. Try to notice that it has a lot to do with your hand because it's a condiment. Or a sauce, because it's going to give you a hand, or it's going to be in your hand. As silly as that stuff may sound, think of the word condom with an O that you wear on yourself. Constitutes itself ongoing notion, to and from ongoing manifestation. Condiment constitutes itself ongoing notion, dia, identified, and then you manifest that expressed notion plus a condiment. So you're going to put it on something. All right, well then you would do that out of your hand. So you have something in front of you, from a place called Heinz. H here, expressed, identified notion from one side to the other. Heinz. What do you do with it? You put it in your what? Your hands. It's Heinz. How cool is that? The other one that sometimes has ketchup but has a lot of sauces, and they both have sauces, they're intermingled with Kraft. They have Hunt's. Hunt apostrophe S. That's the name of the sauce. Now when you put that name on a sauce, it's the here, unit, notion, plus apostrophe subject. So you're going to put this subject, that's apostrophe, to the thing that is here, unit, notion, plus. That's why the word hunt by itself is when you don't have something and you want. So in your wants tense with an H, that unit, notion, that you want to plus. And if you go out and you get something and you hunt for it, it's that here, unit, notion, plus, or that here, plus. Do you see how those words actually make sense? They just have different tenses to the words themselves. And they really work in the way that they're being used always in those breakdowns. Here, unit, notion, plus, apostrophe S, because it's at here, unit, notion, plus, and then you're putting this thing on it. Sauce, condiment. See? Same with Heinz, here, expressed, identified, notion, from one side to the other. Z. You're going to put it on it. How cool is that? Now you move down into words like manwich. It's a sloppy Joe sauce. You're the man, or you're the manifested active notion from that word, plural, identified, constant to itself, here. So if you were something that was there, man, plural, identified, constant to itself, here. It would be something upon you, plural, identified, constant to itself, here. So it's not just with. It's not something outside you, W-H-I-C-H, that you're choosing from. Which one? It's on you, manwich. And it's not just a coincidence that it's sloppy Joe, because if you just think of the word Joe meaning yourself, it means to get yourself sloppy. Sloppy Joe, sloppy yourself, manwich. See how silly those things are, but they're really words, and they mean what they say. The companies don't know that. There's just names. This makes sense. It's a combination of this word and that word. It's a passed down word from our family, they say. But this is all magic. We're all this one being inside itself, basically making up and changing and having cosmic thoughts inside its cosmic mind. And it's only one thing happening. There's vibrations that work through the air that we see and don't see. Some of them we do, some of them we don't. I happen to see them, and I feel them, and I know them, and I teach them. If I didn't, it wouldn't make so much sense that some of these weirdest things make sense. And then some of them are dark, some of them are awesome, but that's the case. The truth is the truth, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. And that just seems to be how it appeals to you. Some things are good for almost everybody, and some things are bad for almost everybody. But they're still mostly opinions. So that was Heinz, Hunt's, and Manwich. To me, this one's really cool. If you've watched some of the older episodes and seen how spot on some things are, this one is just right on the schnoz. McCormick, the spice company. You have manifest concept or constant to itself, and then a big C constant to itself. So you have a little c and a big C next to each other, so it's upon itself. So you have a little c, then a big C, ongoing reference, manifest identified, constant to itself, kinetic. It's the name of a company that is a spice, and a spice happens to be a dried, ongoing reference of a manifested concept. If you went backwards from it, it would be like rehydrating what the word came from, and the word came from people who dried spices and got popular for being a spice company. So it's Mick, manifest, constant to itself, or unseen. So at that point, that would be something growing. Then it's constant to itself with a big C, like it grew, ongoing reference, and then you manifest that identified, unseen concept kinetically, a spice. See how that's a magic word. And it's a company that is known for selling spices. See how all words really are that? And if you understand how I'm talking about, it's not just the math, it's if you understand what things mean. MC means of. And then you would say Cormick. You'd have the constant to itself for the unseen ongoing reference, manifested, identified, constant to itself, kinetic. So it's core Mick. It's core, manifested, identified, constant to itself, kinetic. See how that stuff actually makes sense if you know what it means. Now, if you place that combination of words and letters on things, everywhere it is in the world, it's living it, it's doing it, it represents it. Every time. And it can be scrambled and moved around the tiniest bit, and you'd think that would be like, no way, that could not make any sense. But it does. I assure you it does. As wild and weird as that is, everything is in place. But that doesn't mean everything is going perfectly. It just means that people aren't directing themselves, and the way the mass psychology is being controlled through ideas, we're destroying ourselves. Or we're letting the world be this crazy and make everybody think that we're going to destroy ourselves, but we just are. Look at us. Is there a question to shit is wrong? It doesn't have to be an asteroid ending the world. It doesn't have to be an alien invasion. It just has to be, is anybody out there? Is anybody home? Is anybody around that gives a damn? I know there's a few, and I'm thankful for that. But do you see, that's the issue we have in hand to worry about first. But we'll go back to the foods, and I just thought McCormick was awesome, so we'll keep going. Continuing with more sauce and condiment companies, we have Prego and Ragu. You see, those are almost the same word. One is a P-R-E-G, then O. One is a R-A-G, then U. One is placement, piece, or potential reference expressing generated and grouped, ongoing. It's a sauce because it's already place, piece, potential. Reference expressed, generated and grouped, egg, ongoing. You add it to it. So it's something that should go in there, Prego. And then Ragu, reference, active, generated and grouped, underlying or unit. Separate from, but if you put that word together, it's like it's got to be part of it. It's not just regular, it's Ragu. It's in there. One is like, put it in there, Prego. Like, pray, go. You know? Pray, go. And then the other one is Ragu. It's got to be in there. It's not just regular, it's Ragu. It's in there. And those are the slogans. See how those things are so cool and they're magic words. The sayings are magic and they resonated and came out of certain people for reasons. And it's amazing. Now, we'll be moving into the meat category, and that's a hard one for me to go through because, as you might not know by now, if you don't, I don't do anything that harms any living creature, so I don't call myself vegan. I'm a person who actually is love and doesn't cause any pain if they can avoid it. What's so bad about that? I don't know. I guess being strong and tough means you're supposed to go start fights, but that's not me. The way we actually have to see it is that if you don't know who the specific enemy or problem is, or the cause of the problem is coming from, you can't really say that you have an enemy. You have to figure that out within yourself. You have to know what is right and what is wrong, and not just to you by understanding through becoming a better person yourself, so through you. That's how you know what is truly right and wrong. And when you start putting that into place, you start seeing how life is supposed to be. Whether it's better than your current situation or worse than your current situation, it is better to be better, period. So, moving from those, we'll be going into the ones that get me all stirred up, and I apologize. But Sweet Baby Ray's and Tony Chachere's. I think that's how you say it. Chathere. One is a Creole seasoning, so you can put that on anything, so it's not really all that bad. But I try to stay in alphabetical order. So you have Sweet Baby Ray's. Now just take those words and put them on what we're doing with it. It's a barbecue sauce or sauces that you smother on meat, usually ribs, baby rays. And they happen to be baby pigs that are killed. And if you understand what light is and the idea of a ray of light, you're saying sweet, subject, plural, expressed upon itself, plus baby, base, active, base, vitally identified, and then rays, reference, active, vitally identified. So you're smothering something to make it sweet, of course, but it's a baby light. Do you see how sick that really is? Because of what it's being used for, and it really is being used for that if we don't just beat around the bush and say, oh, but. It doesn't matter. Those are living things, and they look like little babies. They're just shaped different. And it's sick if you really think about it in the way we do it. So I don't want to get on to a tangent. Then Tony Chachere's Creole seasoning. It's one of the only ones I could think of that was, I think, at least national, because there's so many companies that might just be local, and they all fit. I was going to do some from this area, but that would have taken so much longer, and I have so much more to do. So Tony Chachere's, Chathere. Just look at how it is. Cha. Not chi as in energy, but charge. When you charge, when things change, it's that constitute itself here active. Now from there, constitute itself here expressing. And from all of that together, the reference of expression. It's saying that this thing, Tony, the thing that adds up to, plus ongoing notion vitally identified, and it's a seasoning that you put on something to make it hot, or for Creole. And even the word Creole, constitute itself, or unseen, reference expressing an ongoing active base of expression. Creole. It means to create, but even more primal than that. I like to use the word primal in those situations. I know it's not necessarily that word, but it's just, it means more than just create. It's Creole. It's got soul. Create soul all together. Ooh, sorry. Anyway, so now we'll move into the meats and just understand what words not only add up to, but when you know what certain words mean, and then you see something that is more like a tense of that same word, combined with the name of a god or the name of something of a divine entity or some kind of sacred symbology. It's kind of weird when it's a food about death, or when it's a symbology that goes along with a certain simple idea where the people would have to know that that's what they're doing, and they're doing it anyway. And if people really thought about it, they would have to really second guess what they're doing to themselves and their loved ones. And that's what I want them to think about, because this is important from our heart and soul, what we're feeding ourselves. Before we move into actual meat, I'm not really going to do any poultry specific ones because they're very general. You use chicken and turkey and things like that for very common things, and there's few that have random names, but they're usually a family name, and I could go into all those different ones, but I'm just going to stick with ones that I know are known worldwide, and because of that, they're the most popular and the most common, and there's reasons for all that. With that being said, before we go into those, there are two things that are egg-related, such as Eggland's Best. I just did a video recently on initials, and there's a very powerful thing with initials too, believe it or not. And EB, like the word ebb from ebb and flow, when you have a plural W, EB, it's a plural ebb. It's something that expresses the base. But if you have a plural expressed base, it's something that's built there in this place to express the base. See how it's a web. Now you just have an EB instead of EBB being like ebb and flow. It's not the movement or the coming back from. It's just it inside it. EB, expressed base. Like eggs. And it's EB, the initials for Eggland's Best. Then take that into the word Hellmann, which is spelled Hellmann. Now, like I've said before, NN is blank space or inside that space. NN, 28. With H being at the beginning, expressing an LL between two L's, manifesting an active notion upon itself with two N's, and it happens to be a place that is known for cage-free egg mayonnaise, Hellmann's Best. Bring out the Hellmann's, bring out the best. Do you see how that would be a company that has to do with eggs whipped upon themselves making mayonnaise? Hellmann's, here expressed between two L's, manifesting an active N in that space, that notion, in that space. Mayonnaise with eggs. See how wild that may seem, but it's right there. And now we'll start with meats, but most of these are just too much for me to go into, and I will speed through them because there are lots and lots of things to go. If you've spent some of your time away from the mainstream and looked into anything deeper, you will definitely have ran into the word occult. Now, some people say occult just means hidden from view. Some people think occult means like bad and evil. But before I break it down, we'll look at the definitions given to us in the dictionary. Occult. 1. Of or pertaining to various magical arts and practices as astrology, alchemy, etc. 2. Beyond human understanding, mysterious. 3. Not divulged or disclosed, secret, see mysterious. To hide or conceal from view, to become hidden or concealed from view. To cover over or hide. From Latin occultus or occultare. Now that's been heard by so many people, but look at the letters and see how simple it is when you use all of those definitions and you think, occult, what does it mean? With that combination of letters, something is ongoing, starting with an O, and it's constant to itself or unseen upon itself from something that's ongoing, right? Yeah. Now that's a unit or it's an underlying thing. Whether it's physical or non-physical, that's why I say unit or underlying. And then the active base of or as it lie. And then plus. So it's the idea of an ongoing thing that is constant to itself or unseen upon itself. As a unit, as it lies plus. Do you see how that makes more sense now that I've explained what numbers, letters, and symbols actually mean? And it has nothing to do with just the etymology. It has a little bit. You can understand it vaguely, but it goes deeper. And there is deeper to even go than that. But until we get this going, it's not going to matter. We're debating over definitions. Yeah, there's people out there that are in groups that hide shit from other people. Put it that way. Now, in these same groups, you'll hear people talking about Baal, the dark god or the dark lord Baal. They're all Baal worshippers, they say. Well, moving on to this next one that's such a wholesome, good family name. In fact, they have thousands of violations and a whole bunch of scandals. When you hear Campbell's Soup, it's likely that many people remember from the olden days, or not so long ago, when they had like the little boy or the little girl with the rosy cheeks at the cartoon character that was warming up with its Campbell's Soup. Good. Well, it's chunks of little dead stuff, and it's not like premium quality. No matter what they say, they're going to advertise it the best they can. And they can cut corners and use specific words to make things sound good. And I assure you, they are not good. Good things are not happening behind those companies. The people, they're just working. And we live in such a crazy world, people are used to doing just hideous things and thinking it's okay. And then they'll give an excuse of, well, humans are just animals too. Well, we're evolving as a higher level of intelligence. Yes, we are animate, and we are beings that don't just grow from the ground. So yes, we're of the animal species, but we're higher in capability. And if people can't see that by now, I don't know what to tell you. The reason I wanted to bring up Baal, the dark god, we have Camp Bell as one word. So if people in those groups talk about how all these deep meanings are of these things people don't understand, and then someone like me starts pointing it out in everyone and everything and showing you why things are the way they are in the universe, why am I getting any difficulty or just people not actually tuning in to what I'm saying from these groups? Because it's not fun? Well, guess what, guys? I love you enough to say it's not going to be fun. Get over that shit. Be real, and you will enjoy life. You'll know what's going on. Sometimes you'll have fun. Sometimes it'll suck. That's really life, and you can't avoid it when you're working on fixing the problems. Campbell, constant to itself or unseen, amp, active, manifest, placement or potential, base, expressed as it lies between here and here. When you put a P and a B next to each other, you're going from potential to base. Before this, constitute itself amp, base, expressing between here and here. Put that together now. It's doing the opposite of good. It's doing shouldn't. Go back to nature and start eating real food, and you'll start seeing how intelligent you really are. You've just been lied to and fed death your whole life. And all of the generations before you, the same thing. We're moving to a period of time where we have the possibility to be better people than we've ever been. So I don't know what the issue is and why people are waiting so damn long. Let's get a move on.
I wanted to throw this one in there because I'm not trying to leave out the healthy foods. Of course, this is what we should be focusing on. So 4 companies. We have Bragg, as in Bragg's apple cider vinegar. Bragg's is a base reference, active, generated and grouped upon itself. Fermentation is generated and grouping upon itself. Or aggregation is AGG. And we have base, RA is raw, and then something that's generated and grouped from the sun upon itself is an apple from a tree that ferments. Bragg. See how that may sound, but that's exactly what they're doing. And the guy who founded the company's name was Paul Bragg. Placement, active, unit as it lies, and then you say base reference activated, generated and grouped upon itself. So you have an apple, and then you have apple cider vinegar. Bragg's. Move into Mott's. Just like we had apple cider vinegar, if you've ever heard anything about apple cider vinegar, you want the raw stuff that has mother in it. Mother as in Mother Earth. Mother as in the feminine nature, the divine thing that gives us life. Earth. Mother Earth. And you have Bragg's, apple cider vinegar. Now you have Mott's. From mother, Mott, manifest ongoing plus plus. When you have a manifested ongoing thing and 2 T's is 40, you have plus plus. And they're a place that has apple juice and apple sauce. Mott's. Now move from that right into Dole. How we just had 2 T's equals 40. Dole is D then O, which is 4 then O. It's just like 40, but it would be to and from, ongoing, as it lie, expressed. So if you want to take something to or from an ongoing as it lie expression, it would be something from a tree. So Dole does pineapples, bananas, and more things like that. And then, of course, they branched out into other fruits and vegetables. Now, from Dole to Del Monte, they do an even amount of fruits and vegetables. Dole is more like tropical fruits, and then they expanded. Del Monte, just like the farmer in the Dell, a secluded wooded area, if you had one L outward, it's a whole bunch of things that grow, and it's the manifested ongoing notion or nature plus the expression. So the fruits or the vegetables of a plant. Del Monte. You could go really deep into it and say D then EL as in the god name, the bovine god, which is from the earth. So you have to and from the expressed ling, manifested ongoing notion or nature, plus its expression. Del Monte. See how this is people and places that name themselves certain things, and most of them have something to do with a family name. These aren't just coincidences, as I've said many times. So, we'll continue the rest of the list. I have to throw this one in there just to make a point. None of this is me making things up. This is me showing you how the universe is working. And since we're people, we want to think that everything's going to be cut and dry so that every individual can understand it simply, which is actually what I'm trying to do, although it's almost cosmically impossible that every person is going to understand it for what it actually is, because their mind is full of ideas that they want to believe. Since we just did Bragg's, Mott's, Dole, and Del Monte, going back to the ones that were focusing on apples and mother, with mother being in your apple cider vinegar, then we have Mott, which is applesauce and apple juice. Yes, they expanded, but that was primarily what they started with. This company comes from a man named Edmund Materne, which is mother's nature expression, and his name is Edmund, expressing to and from the mound. See how we had Del Monte, which is Mont. This one is Edmund Materne. So if you have Materne, you have mother's nature expression, and he happens to be the Go-Go Squeeze founder. I'm telling you, these people don't sit around going, yeah, my name means an ancient god named Mother, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that my life is going after making something from Mother, which deep down in my soul, I know that that means earth and apples. No, they don't do that. But guess what? The universe works through them exactly that way, no matter what they're doing in the other aspects of their lives. Those will all have specific resonations with each circumstance and each individual situation. That's how it works with everyone and everything. And like I've said, I happen to be the only individual ever alive who has actually experienced the beginning, and I don't want anything for it. I'm teaching it because that's what true love is. I don't want anything from you. I want you to become better so the world around you can be affected by the greatness you have within you instead of listening to what other people told you to keep their control over you. Before we do the actual meats, I just want to make a point. Think about the way we talk. We say things for a reason. We say things like, don't be a chicken, or, what a chicken. We say, don't have any beef with me, or, I don't want any beef. We say, man, what a pig. Don't be a cow. But at the same time, we consume them. We say, ooh, something's cheesy about that, or something's fishy about that too. But we consume them. The only time we use the word vegetable in a negative way is when we're talking about when someone's paralyzed but still alive. So in a way, that's a compliment to the vegetable. It's saying, hey, you didn't need to be an animal to be alive. Just that comparison of those words. Think about how we consume the things we say not to be. It's all on purpose. And it's not just the word, but the words explain the things, and the things are the things we do. And we don't even think twice about it. That's what I'm trying to get people to do. And once you start doing that, and really challenge yourself. Don't just go, oh, I was doing it forever, so I'm going to keep doing it. Don't do that. You're actually harming yourself and not getting to see how far you could go as an individual in growth. And I just want to see that for everybody of every age. Now we'll move into the things I guess we call meats. Before we go into our next one, I know a lot of people aren't going to have any understanding of other languages or other words that may mean certain things. But this one is Chef Boyardee, good old chef, you know? If you look at the word Boyer, B-O-Y-A-R, and look up its dictionary definition, and then look up the word D-E-E and look up its dictionary definition, and then put them together as a compound word, it's not a very good idea. But then if you realize that that's not what the guy's name was when it was spelled that way, and it has a very profound meaning that other people will just not understand, and they'll think it's just so minuscule and tiny that it means nothing, but it does. If your name is spelled a certain way in a different country and it's pronounced and said a certain way, it resonates a certain way. And then when you move it here and it's said a whole bunch of times for a long time and people associate that word with something good and it actually means something bad, then bad things start happening, whether we get it or not. Now, first of all, a boy is the idea of young male action. Boy, your base, ongoing, vital identity. Boy, the actions that you take as a young, youthful man. Well, Chef Boyardee, a bardo is the place you go between lives. A Boyardee, B-O-I-A-R-D-I, the way it's spelled, means to do something with things when they die. But then, the word Boyer, B-O-Y-A-R, means base, ongoing, vitally identified, active reference. Connected to D-E-E means to make dark. To make your base, ongoing, vitally identified, active reference dark. It's a vehicle of death, is basically what the word means. When you actually just say it for what it means, when you take definitions and put them together to make a word out of something, out of words that already exist. And where do we come from? From things that are already existing, that are passed down, ideas, tendencies, traditions, of course. So they end up playing out whether we get it or not. I'm sure many of us remember this old classic commercial. I want chef. Not tonight, honey. Chef. And then the can hops off the shelf and follows them down the highway to their house and shows up at their front door. I don't want whatever's in that can. But either way, Chef Boyardee. I'm going to go deeper into this one than many of the other ones because there are levels to it. And it goes very deeply with the person's name and where he's from and his birthday because it's based off of an actual human being specifically. The man's name is E-T-T-O-R-E, Ettore, but it's angelicized as Hector Boyardee, spelled B-O-I-A-R-D-I. That's how his name is spelled. So since he was born into a resignation identified with that, he's base, ongoing, identity, active reference, dia, identity. So he's supposed to activate a reference to and from himself, and it's a base, ongoing identity first.
So that means it's going to come from him, and he's going to activate that reference to and from himself. And his name is his name. That resonates in a way that people don't understand. And when you think about where did we get our information from, whether they migrated and all that stuff that's going on in history behind all the scenes, that affects us. So the tendencies that we've taken part in and the practices we've done are going to be passed down little by little by little, and the languages change. In languages nearby there, a boyar is a member of high royalty that is close to the prince. And then in those same dialects, D-E-E means black or dark, to make dark or black. So if you were the high royalty to make dark or black, when you change B-O-I to B-O-Y-A-R, and then turn the D-I into D-E-E, when D-E-E means to turn black. Boyar, royalty, D, turn black. Okay. At the same time, boyar is a very primitive form or a lesser form or a closer intense form to voyage. Now, V-O-Y-A-G-E is a lot different, but V is 22, B is 2. So it's base ongoing, not vital ongoing. So when you take that all together and you add into his place that he was born, you'll see what I mean. But I'm going to do this in parts. So first, boyar, base ongoing, vitally identified. AR is the idea of a body vehicle, but it's base ongoing, vitally identified active reference from the old dialects. Okay, we don't speak the same way. We don't walk around calling people boyar, or anybody boyar. Either way, in my local area, we have a company called Boyar RVs, base ongoing, vitally identified express reference. They spell it with an E because it's a place that expresses your reference, and it's a RV place. Base ongoing, vitally identified, expressed reference. Boyar RVs. Wow, what a coincidence. A vehicle that you explore in. Voyage, but boyared with a B-O-Y-E-R. Now turn that into an AR, and you're an active reference. So you're a body of some sort. Not royalty, but a body of some sort. D-E-E. Black. Dark. There's death involved, Look at where he's from, and you have to understand this resonates. It doesn't only mean this. It has so many resonations because it's a place. B-O-R-G-O-N-O-V-O. Bore, once again, to slice into, not bored or borin, or when you B-O-R-E, you're plunging into or being driven into. When you're just B-O-R, the letters after change everything. When you have a border, it's B-O-R as a base ongoing reference, and to and from that express reference, a border. When you have B-O-R, base ongoing reference, G-O-N, generated ongoing notion or nature, O-V-O, ongoing, vital, ongoing. Okay. And then the next part is V-A-L, vital, active as it lies. And then T-I-D-O-N-E, tidone or tidone, plus identity, done, or plus identified, dia, ongoing notion expressed. So he's the chef from Borgonovo Val Tidone, Emilia, Italy. E-M-I-L-I-A. He takes things as they're expressed, manifested, identified as they lie, and identifies an active from them. That's a chef. With all that stuff put together, definitely. And then he's born 10/22/1897, which would be J, 10, 22, V, JV, the younger version, the JV. I'm not saying that it was something he planned, but it's definitely aimed at kids more. 1897 is the word rig. 18 is R, 9 is I, 7 is G. So it's aimed at young bodies, and it's coming from young bodies, because it's boyar D. D is a to and from, expressed upon itself. So it comes from a vehicle of life, boyar, and it goes to an expression upon itself. See what I'm saying? And he's the chef of it. Not that he knew. He was vibrating with the world perfectly. Everyone does. Everyone. And I'm not saying this for fun. You should know by now, because some of it's really dark, and there's a lot more to it, but we've got a lot more to go.
It's my worst nightmare, but let's just jump right in. Continuing with the word plays, how we say beef, chicken, something fishy. What about spam? Nobody wants spam, but for some reason, that mystery meat is something that people eat. It's a subject potential active manifestation. You can get spam, it's something, but usually it's something you don't want because it's subject. It's not the thing you're looking for. It's just there. And it's a glob of nastiness. And for something to die, for somebody to eat something like that, that's horrible for them, makes no sense. The next thing, Jack Links. Just look at the beef jerky names. Jack Links. If you're going to jack somebody's link, well, that's death. And we know that when you link up, we talk about the missing link.
Just think about it. Jack Links. Then you have dukes. If you put up your dukes, that's your to and from unanimous or unit kinetic expression. So if you're taking it to and from a unit kinetic expression and it's beef jerky, it's kind of gross. Do you see how that actually makes sense? Then you have stuff like Slim Jim, subject as it lies, identified manifestation, and then intense identified manifestation. It's a little tiny stick, and on it they have a little pun that says, join the big boy gang, because they don't want you to think you have a Slim Jim. They want you to think you have a big boy. I see 50-year-old men snacking down Slim Jims left and right, and they're in the big boy gang, I guess. I mean, it's just a little dead animal ground up into a little sausage stick with a lot of extra preservatives and blah added to it. And that's what we're putting in our bodies. Oh yeah, dig it, because Macho Man said so. No, we've got to start thinking. The manly thing to do is to stop eating dead animals. Anyway, I knew I'd come to this one eventually. And like I've said, there are tenses of words. H-O-R-M, horm. Almost like the word harm, but it's ongoing. It's not just the active reference of manifestation, like the here active reference of manifestation. That's harm. But if you have a here ongoing reference of manifestation, that's harm, continuous. Then you add E-L, one of the sacred god names of the bull god, or just a sacred god name, E-L. And then you have harm before it. It means continuous harm to God. That's literally what the word would mean in one terminology. Other than that, it's a here ongoing reference, and you manifest an expression as it lie. That's kind of sick if you break it down and just think about it. And Hormel, I'm not going to go into their products. I'm not going to go into any of this stuff because then it gets me going off on tangents and it's gross. And I know that some people just don't care and they're not compassionate towards other things that are alive. And that's a shame, but that's Hormel. Moving on from Hormel, we have Oscar Mayer. Who wants to be a wiener? Just the word scar. Think of a scar just being something that's left on your skin. Think of an ongoing scar. And then think of Meyer, not Mayer, but the express reference, not the ongoing reference, or the manifested active, vitally identified ongoing reference. That's the mayor, the one who's just over the city or whatever, over the town, who the mayor. Who. But then you have Meyer, Oscar Mayer, as manifest active, vitally identified express reference, but after scar, an ongoing scar. Think of not just a scar, like I said, something that's left on your skin. And Oscar Mayer is wieners. And it's little cylindrical pieces shaped like you-know-what's called wieners. And you put them in your mouth. I mean, there's so many innuendos. It's sick and it's gross. And they're just ground up deadness wrapped in the skin. Oscar Mayer. So who would be the mayor of something wrapped in skin, which would be an Oscar? Yes, there's plenty of other people named Oscar. And it will go with their name and their last name and their middle name will all take place. And I had all this stuff lined up. But it doesn't matter. You can see for yourself. Oscar, instead of just a scar, the ongoing scar, so the skin, and then Meyer. And the guy whose name started it, his name was actually Oskar, which is even more of a kinetic thing. So it goes deeper into all this stuff, and some of it's very gross. I encourage you to look for yourself if you're interested, and apply the word, and you'll see what I'm saying. It's all true. Start to trust me a little bit if you don't already, because you can. That's Oscar Mayer. I'm not going to go much more into that. The ongoing scar mayor, but just in a different terminology, in a different tense. Starting it off, and now it's going on. It's echoing through time from that name, and it's doing what it's doing. And it's not helping people. It's hurting people. And it's hurting a lot of other living things that die for you to die slowly. No sense whatsoever. These next few are just word sound-alikes, and because of what they do, I'm not going to go into it much, but Smithfield. If you know what a smith is, and you connect that in front of the field, it's the guy who works with the things that live in the field, and they're the smith of them. Smithfield is meats. Then you have armor, A-R-M-O-U-R. If you wanted to wear armor, A-R-M-O-R, I don't think you'd want it from another unit, would you? And it's literally the active reference manifestation of an ongoing unit reference. So it's a dead thing. It's a dead chunk. Armor. Unless you want to wear someone else's skin. It's either eating a dead thing or wearing someone else's skin. The way it's spelled is what it would mean in one of its terminologies. The other one, Dinty Moore. If you wanted to identify the word dent as a vital identified, and then do it more upon yourself as an expression and put that in you, then that wouldn't be so good. That's one way to look at that word, and it's really that good for you, especially with the amount of sodium along with the deadness and the junk in it, the preservatives. I'm not trying to put these companies down. They're just companies. They're just people working for their dollar. That's what's driving most of it in the first place. Not trying to go too much into the words because, like I said, I don't want to break it down. They're just places that, yes, they have vegetables, but at the same time, they're putting chunks of dead animals and they're lasting on shelves for years. You think that's going to be good for you in any way? No. We've got to learn to take care of ourselves. You know, we can go through cycling food that grows month by month by month, no matter what climate we're in. We just learn how to do it and get used to doing that for ourselves all the time. And bam, life is taken care of. Then we actually work on communication with each other so we're not so afraid of each other. They're very simple steps to change the whole face of communities, but people have to be willing to do it and stand up for themselves. So let's continue.
As I start moving towards the conclusion of this video, I didn't know where to put this, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And I know that's an overused slogan, but I mean it. The light, the life-giving essence, the true value, worth,
And currency that actually holds meaning in the world
is not money. It's real living things that provide. That is not going to be dead animals and their pieces. That's going to be things that are pure, that come from the sun and nature. Obviously, we're just so disconnected that people are foreign to what's real, and they embrace what isn't real as if it's what the real things are, because that's all they know. That's why it's very important to teach them the truth about life, not about government and people and history, because history was never completely right. I didn't want to do any names in depth in this video, so I'm not going to go too deep into any of them, like I just barely touched most of the people that I mentioned so far. But as I've said many times, there are no coincidences in the universe, no matter what people think. And we have people that are in the more presently common carnivore movements and things like that, with names like Anthony Chafee. Just listen to what that means. And then he Chafee, okay? I'm not even going to go too deep into that. Active notion plus, here ongoing notion vitally identified. What notion is that? Chafee, constant here, active, force or form upon itself, expressed upon itself. When you chafe, and it's going to express upon itself if you listen to someone with stupid information like that. Along with him, the word is more powerful than people will ever understand. But I do, because I'm not just a person. I'm a sage in human skin. I know the words may not touch certain people the right way, but it's more true than I could even express. I know the truth about nature, and I know what creation wants from us. And I'm teaching it. If your heart's open, you'll hear that, and you'll know that. There won't be any questions. The only question you will truly have, if any, is how the hell do we get people to wake up and stop enjoying the suffering we're putting into the world? Another name of one of the carnivore movement people, Sean Baker, subject here, active, plural, notion or nature, Baker, base, active, kinetic, expressed reference. Of course, he's going to want to eat dead things. Subject here, active, plural, notion or nature, base, active, kinetic, expressed reference. Okay, another person was Paul Saladino, who dropped the carnivore diet. Because like I said, how powerful is the word? Well, Paul is placement, piece, or potential, active, unit, or underlying, as it lie, or ling, the active base. And then with Saladino, literally spelled Saladino, he was on the carnivore diet. Because he wanted to fit in a world, whether he wants to say it or admit it, in his heart and soul, his resignation is like everybody else's, but his ego and his personality wasn't pure. He could have great things about him, but when somebody listens to other people around them, instead of really going within themselves and thinking and feeling, seeing how things really apply to you, that's why he would try to resonate with that, with Paul, placement active unit as it lies, and then subject active as it lies, active to and from, identified notion ongoing. So he's going to go along with a lot of the identified notions. But then that power of the word comes in, and his last name is actually Salad. I know. So he was on the carnivore diet, and then he started including fruits and vegetables into his diet. And it must just be some kind of weird fluke that his last name is Salad. I know. You take the K out because it's already him, his identity. Notion ongoing. Salad, identity, notion ongoing. Now Paul Saladino dropped the carnivore diet and came around a little bit. Wow, what a coincidence. Now look out into the world and see nature. See what we're doing, destroying the land to grow crops to feed animals when we could do it ourselves on a lower level for each individual person and their communities. And we could work together to provide food, which is the true wealth and currency. Not paper, not dead presidents, not invisible digits. Look at your local area. See, maybe you have a mechanic shop that some oil or grease or some kind of pollution is leaking into the water, leaking into a lake nearby, leaking into a creek nearby. Do you think that stuff is needed because it makes life convenient so we can get around back and forth to our jobs to pay taxes to the criminal people who keep us their slaves? Sure it is. Yeah, that's how people should be living because we're so advanced. I know how to live advanced, but it's actually 180 from what we're doing right now. Advancing has nothing to do with machines and technology. That's destroying. That's trying to turn things into some kind of robotic machine that can't think for itself. And if you don't believe that, look around, and when you have an original thought, how many people will put you down and ignore you and exclude you from their friend groups or family? Believe me, I know how that goes. When you feel completely healthy and completely in tune with the world around you, and then you see everyone else who isn't, you only try to open your heart and help them, and they throw you out like trash. You know why? Because they resonate with trash. And when your inside is shining like the gold that creation wants you to be, trash doesn't want gold around. And I'm not saying that I'm golden for some kind of egoic boost. I'm saying it because creation has endowed me with the true understanding and knowledge that I have to share, and I have to speak it honestly. So I do. Since there are a limited amount of words to express the depth that I understand, golden, enlightened, sage, Christ, those are smaller than who I really am. And if you could raise yourself to a higher level, those things would be much smaller than who you really are, because potentially they already are. You just aren't reaching your potential or trying to. A lot of people think they are, but when you're chasing after getting a good scholarship and a good job and a good wage, that's not doing anything for your real growth. And I know so many people are disconnected from nature and spirit or anything higher than just physical world stuff. That sounds foreign to them because they're foreign to themselves and nature. And that's what I'm here to repair. You know, I think we're going to wrap that up for the meats and move on to snacks. First, more of the cakey type things, the snack cakes, and then moving into the sweets and all the other stuff. Betty Crocker. The female form of a body is Betty. A Betty. Go out into the beach, look for some Bettys and some Tommies, you know. Before we go into Betty Crocker, we just have to realize that the world itself is a conspiracy because we conspire to believe that things are a certain way. So it's not necessarily the idea of, oh my God, it's a conspiracy, they're plotting against us. Because in a way, we plot against ourselves by making plots to the story that we live in and saying that this is how things are supposed to be, this is how we're expected, this is how things run. That's a plot. What is the plot of a story? The potential as it lies ongoing plus or to any. That's the plot. So if people plot against you, that means they have a plan for their story. That's all it means. So when we conspire or we bring together in breath, it literally is what every society does amongst themselves. So with that being said, the company's General Mills. And if you really think about General Mills, GM was a vehicle of two sorts. There was General Motors, which drove you around physically. Then there was General Mills, which drove the household because they supplied everyday baking goods and household goods. But what they did is they made it simple. And because of that specific thing being a worldwide known brand, many people stopped learning how to cook. It took years and decades for that to happen. But if you just could buy a box and add an egg and you felt like you baked it, you're not a better cooker. You're a Betty Crocker. The idea of a great cook, but a crock. Expressed reference. You don't know how to cook. You used Betty Crocker. To properly go into Betty Crocker, we'll have to include General Mills, the company that owns it, and then the women who played the character. Since it's a very old company from 103 years ago, they've been through a lot of situations and a lot of times and a lot of changes. So the word general means common or known to the whole, the word gene, and then ral, almost like real, but ral. Generate, expressed, notion or nature, expressed, reference, active, as it lies, or as an active base. So then mill is something that a manifested, identified LL between here is an X. So it's where you mix things together, where it goes around and around, or where it's being done, where you mill something. We all know what a mill is. Now, if you resonate with that word and you want that in your home, so you're going to do the things that are in general, in the manifested, identified, between two L's as a subject. I mean, it sounds funny, but that resonates with people when it becomes part of their life.
So, of course, it's a great company for a person who wants their home to just be common. And if everybody eats the same kind of thing, everybody brings in the same kind of energy, and everybody acts the same kind of way, then, of course, they're going to respond to their vibration, but people didn't understand that then. So therefore, they would see people acting a way outside them and be like, oh, I've got to qualify with the Joneses. I've got to keep up with the times. I got to be in with the people, be in with the crowd. This was during the time where phonographs and radios moved into televisions. Then everybody was getting brainwashed to think a certain way. Just right now, we have commonalities. We have traditions. We have a popular way of society. And all those things are man-made. Those are ideas that were given to you from a young age. And when somebody confronts you with it or brings it up to you, you'll get mad about it and defend what you've always done, even though it was something somebody else taught you. Because you loved that person, or you cared about that person, or idolized that person. I truly, totally get that stuff. But now it's time to see that whether it was meant to go badly, or if it was meant to be some kind of sneaky agenda, it ended up being that. Because behind people that are fallible, money gets in the way. Status gets in the way. Control gets in the way. And that has happened for a very long time. Now, we'll go into the women that played the role of Betty Crocker and how that turned into some kind of huge scandal to find out Betty Crocker was not even a real person.
She was referred to as the First Lady of Food, second only to Eleanor Roosevelt. That's how popular she was.
And when people found out that Betty Crocker was fake, they felt completely lied to because they had a face that they identified with it and a voice and a way of being that they identified it with. And unfortunately, that was man-made. Whether it was on purpose, it taught a lot of women to not cook because it was handled for them. And just think of what General Mills makes. It's usually boxed things that you just grab and pour something on or add one little thing to. Or it'll be something simple like they've bought little companies that are gummies and all that kind of stuff. And since we're getting into snacks, it fits. But it started with cake mixes, especially Betty Crocker.
So that brings us to the women who played the role of Betty Crocker throughout the years. I'll attempt to do them and not sound too robotic because this is going to basically be a tiny little version of Game of Names with the Betty Crocker women and the exact role they played with her. It's kind of amazing when you really take it into consideration. So hold on to your seats and be ready. Yeah, I'm just joking. It's not going to be that exciting, but it's interesting. There were about 50 women who put this whole thing together with other people involved, but I'll only go into a handful of them, the ones who played profound roles in developing the whole thing. First is Ruth Hayes Carpenter. Now, if you wanted to build something, wouldn't you want a carpenter? And Ruth, take a T off of the word truth. It means to reference a unanimous underlying or unit plus here. Then you have Hayes, here active vital identity, expressed subject, carpenter, constant to itself, active reference, placement, expressed notion or nature, plus expressed reference. Ter is territory. So if you have a territory of a carp, which is a idea of a fish, but it's a constant to itself, active reference in place, expressed notion, plus express reference. That's Ruth Hayes Carpenter, the one who built the team that came up with the recipes and went across the U.S. teaching. This woman is actually considered the one who started and oversaw many of the firsts in the Betty Crocker Cooking Company. And do you know what the first month of the year is? January. Her name is Jeanette Kelly. Intense active notion expressing plus upon itself, or 4D, the place of, expression. And then Kelly, kinetic expressed LL, between two L's, or as a lie upon itself, expressed vital identity. She's the one who set up the test kitchen. Do you see how these things are all specific? January, the first month. She's the one who oversaw all the firsts in their test kitchen. Intense active notion expressed. TT is 4D in place, or to any upon itself, expression. and then kinetic expressed as a lie upon itself, expressed vital identity. She set up the first test kitchens. Jeanette Kelly. Next on the list is Agnes White. If you know what an antagonist was, that's somebody who goes against something and starts something. An agonist, we don't really have a word agonist, but antagonist, you means one who goes against something. So if you took off the ant and just said agonist, that would be somebody who starts something. So Agnes, a woman, one who nurtures that feminine quality, would activate a generated and grouped notion, expressed subject. And what would they do with that? They would plural, hear, identify, plus expressed. And she was the person who developed the format for the cooking school and later became Betty Crocker's voice on the West Coast. Because you'd have to have more than one person to get it around the world and get more people on the same page with that down-home cook feeling. Because that's what they were aiming for. So there was Agnes White. I hope this doesn't lose you here, but I give you credit and I know you're quite smart. So the word language, L-A-N-G, starts with lang, and this person has inside her name L-A-N-C-H-E, which isn't quite language. It's lan, constant to itself or unseen, here expression. But her first name is Blanche. So she's the base, as it lie, active notion, unseen or constant to itself, here expressed, Ingersoll. Identified notion, generated and grouped, expressed reference, subject ongoing, active base upon itself. She's the person who was responsible for developing the first scripts for Betty Crocker's cooking demonstrations on the radio. Blanche Ingersoll. Her voice was like a woman next door, dropping in for a morning visit to share her new recipe. That down-home feeling. As you go through these people, you'll see why people got really connected to it. But business is business. And people weren't thinking about that. They were trying their hardest to make it seem authentic. But then, it was all part of business. How we just had Blanche Ingersoll, who was the one who did the voice over the radio, instead of language being L-A-N-C-H-E, the base L-A-N-C-H-E for the radio. This person was the one who originated the signature. Yes, it's changed over the years, but this is where it started. And it started with a person who had lore and lined in her name. So if you're going to write a signature, lore is words, but hers is L-O-R-A-N-C-E, Florence, and then Lindeberg, so it's not a line, and it's not L-I-N-E-D, it's L-I-N-D-E, to and from the expression. So I'll go into breaking it down. Florence Lindeberg, the woman who did the signature for Betty Crocker, form, force, or familiar, as it lies, ongoing reference, active notion, constant to itself expressing, that's your signature in this situation, Lindeberg, as it lie, or the active base, identified notion, to and from the expression, base expression, reference, generated and grouped. She generated and grouped the expressed reference of Betty Crocker. She was the base of the line, but Lindeberg, a little Lindeberg, a little berg of line, is your signature. And it resonated with her name because that's where she was found in the world to play her part. I know it may not seem profound, but she's also a living being who had a whole other life besides that. But this is how she's resonating with the whole. Everyone says, the universe is one, and we're all interconnected. And when someone points it out, for some reason they don't want to go, wow, maybe I should listen to this guy because he knows more about the universe than I do. But for some reason, if you don't have a degree or some kind of people pushing money to say this guy's important, people don't listen. You've got to get your heart involved to care about this. Bring your mind with it, because if you're just all heart, you're not going to think. But then if you're all mind, you're not going to feel. You've got to have the heart-mind connection. And by opening up and listening, that's possible for you. And because I love you, I will continue to try. So that was Florence Lindeberg. Of course, along with all the women who represented, played the voice of, and had the face of Betty Crocker, there were a few men involved, and some of the major ones are the guy who created the idea for Betty Crocker, who is Bruce Barton, an advertising executive, who base, reference, underlying or unit, constant to itself or unseen expression, base air to the housing, because ton is 2000, but we'll say base, active reference, plus ongoing notion. So he's the one, when working with that, resonating with that, invented the character of Betty Crocker. And then you move to Harry Baker, who is a guy who developed the first cake recipe for the chiffon cake that became so popular. And if you know hare, I'm not going to go into that in this one, but here active reference upon itself, vitally identified, in his last name, Baker. Base active kinetic expressed reference. And he's the guy who developed the oh-so-popular chiffon cake mix and took them from dried soup mix to a world of popularity. Now try not to take this too lightly because it's not. Understand that Mary is the divine feminine reference, one of the many, but it's M-A-R, manifest air, it even has the sound air, and then a Y. But if you turn that into Marjorie, the word jury is a group of people that are jurors, but we say J-O-R-I-E. Now it's the ongoing reference identified expression, and you put it all together and say Marjorie, Mary with instead of a Y, you have a J, so this has to do with the feminine nature, and she's representing a whole bunch of them. If you took the J out of it, it'd be Majorie, and she was involved with the wars. Not necessarily involved physically, but she was behind it, talking about the rations and the foods, which really played a big part during these times. And I'm not discrediting that. That's great for the people she cared about. But to avoid putting down the government or talking bad about the militaries, I'm just going to say that this was during a time where the world itself was nowhere near as interconnected as we are due to our communication and technology, but we had closer personal relationships. So it was more likely that you were going to pick a team and stick with it and put your life behind it. So Marjorie was involved with trying to get Betty Crocker to be a name that meant service. And she did exactly that. She got involved with the rationing and things like that and made Betty Crocker a big national name. So to break down her name, Marjorie Child Husted, Marjorie is manifest active reference, intense, ongoing reference, identified expression, and then child, constant to itself, here identified as it lie to and from. When you have your own child, it's your constant to yourself, here identified as it lies to and from. But when you put that into a worldly thing and you get involved on that kind of scale, it happens that way too. So she's constant, here, identified as it lies, to and from. And then Husted. She hosted, but a unit. She's a here, unanimous or unit, subject, plus expressed, to and from. She had a lot to do with the radio telecommunications and bringing people together in the idea of service for the nation. So she wasn't just somebody who hosted, she Husted. I know that sounds funny because they are tenses of words, and they play out in all kinds of different scales depending on how involved you get in your own life and in the world around you. So that was Marjorie Child Husted, and now we'll move on to the very last person who played Betty Crocker as a character on TV and was known as the beautiful face of Betty Crocker. While editing this, I realized that I removed a part of Marjorie Child Husted's recording that is kind of important just to show that since Marjorie Child Husted and the last person that I'm going to include were so popular, you can actually find a Wikipedia page written up about them. The other ones were members of a company that built it, and they were important to the Betty Crocker role, but they weren't known nationally like these two are. And along with Marjorie Child Husted, I want you to notice that her name, if you don't know that J's and Y's were interchangeable in a lot of older languages. So if you took M-A-R-J instead of Y for Mary, and then see that that's a J and an O, which is like Joe, Marjorie. And if you have the reference identified expression from Mar and Joe, Re, and you took that child, it's literally like Mary, Joe, and basically a Christ, all in one, right in a row. And she not just hosted, she Husted a bunch of people who helped get rations for her country. Do you see how that's very motherly to a big group of people? That's why I say it wasn't just hosted, it's Husted. And then her birthday is April 2nd, 1892, which would be Dia for April, to and from, for, and then second base, to and from your base, and then 1892, the reference identified base. So it was training people to learn more about rations and food, because how else would you, to and from your base, reference your identified base? You'd feed yourself and you'd help yourself. And since she resonated so strongly, you would help your country. Do you see how that's exactly spot on for what she did? Plus, she was one of the first voices and one of the people who wrote the scripts for the radio. So that was Dia, to and from the base, referencing your identified base. So she did it on a small level and on a massive level. Because Mary Jo, or Marjorie, is literally a feminine idea in action. Mary and Joseph together would be the feminine nurturing of a male action and child following that, the divine marriage and the child of them. And she's literally trying to help people provide life and rations. And she's helping take action to get that accomplished. Do you see how that's spot on for what she did? Well, with her and our last person who played the beautiful face of Betty Crocker, I wanted to show their birthdays. And I also wanted to mention that we started with character development with someone named Ruth Hayes Carpenter. Now, how we just had the person who mainly played her voice on the radio, I know this may sound funny, but things divinely work out in every aspect when they go for long enough, and they relate to usually a scripture that is more commonly known to that current language being used, because we have Bibles and things like that translated in English. So our names are going to resonate in a way that closely resembles it if you understand what this hidden language and the mystery of the word that I'm teaching is. Now, what I'm saying by that, we had Ruth Hayes Carpenter. When you just think of a carpenter building a building or something like that, a house, you're just thinking of someone who builds. If you have a reference unit plus here, that's Ruth. Hayes as a here active vital identity expressed subject, and then carpenter, and you think that the symbol for Christ is a fish. It's not necessarily just Christ that is the fish. It's all energy in the water. And not to get anybody riled up, but the Bible starts off with God breathing upon the water, okay? So if you're breathing upon the water, and right before Aries comes, the ram, the last sign before Aries is Pisces, the fish. You would come from Pisces into Aries, from the fish into the ram. And our last person happens to have fish as her original maiden born name. And her first name, before she was famous and known, was Dieta, D-I-E-T-A, like the word diet, with an A on the end of it. And her middle name, originally, which became her first name that she was known as, was Adelaide, A-D-E-L-A-I-D-E, Adelaide Holly Cumming. But she was originally born Dieta Adelaide Fish. And the reason I included all that is before her birthday, we have to show that Ruth Hayes Carpenter has carp ent express reference. She helped build the character behind Betty Crocker, a fake person. So it was a carp ent expressed reference. And she helped get that taught around so that they could have that family feel of Betty Crocker. She's one of the beginners of it. The last person isn't a carp enter. She's a dieta, which would mean a diet, active. And this is about food. And not only is it about a food, it's about a horrible food that is cake. That isn't good for you. It's the opposite of a diet. Now, this is her unknown name to the world, but just coincidentally, her born name's last name was Fish. And we have carp enter, and she just followed Mary, or Marjorie, but M-A-R-Jo. So Marjo, and then child, which would be a symbolic idea of Jesus. And then we have the symbol of a fish, starting with a character being established and brought into life more and taught by a person named Carp Enter. That's a fish reference, is it not? And that's her name. Well, this person's born name was Fish, and she was born 3/6. So we have a person who's a fish, a Pisces, born in March, right before Aries comes. That's her sign, would be Pisces, a fish. And her name was Dieta Adelaide fish, ADE, lady, LAID expression, an ID expression of an already existing lady. ADE, LAIDE, okay. She's known across the world, or was known across the world, as Adelaide Holly Cummings. And when you think of the name Holly, here active plural, as it lie, expressed vital identity. So she took over for a very popular expressed vital identity that was already here as a woman, and she was a here active plural, L, as it lie, ling or active base, expressed vital identity. Do you see that? She took over for some identity that was already there. And then Cummings is constant to itself, unit or underlying. Two M's is manifested upon itself. And what? An identified notion generated and grouped. So when you put that all together with her birthday being March 6th, 1905, you have a March which is constant to itself. And really quick, Marjorie has the sound of Marge-orie. And then the child of Marjorie, the rise of Marge and Joe, is the child. And she is a Pisces whose birth name was Fish, who was born on 3/6. So it's not just me saying, oh, this is all coincidence. I've been showing thousands of examples, and I could do this with everyone and everything. I could do it with you. And I don't want to do that to make people feel like they're simple. We are massively amazing. And so are these people, playing their exact role in the universe, the way they were meant to, vibrating with the world around them. So to finish her off, we have March, 3, the constant to itself or the unseen, 6, form, force, or familiar, and then 1905, a subject, ongoing expression. So she took over for this whole line of people. She was the one who was known at the end as Betty Crocker before the world, just accepted that that's a fake character and they don't need to represent it with a real person anymore. Do you see how amazing all that is? Now, the reason I went this extensive into the Betty Crocker is because I did this with almost all of these companies. And this video would have been forever long if I would have done this with all of them. But since this was one of the first folders in the alphabetical order I had them in, I saved it because I wanted to give you an example of how this all is so perfectly universal. And I'm the only person who knows this. And if you've seen enough of my videos, you realize I'm not just saying that. You don't know anyone else who actually knows how the living people in the world are created and why, but I do. And not to go off the subject of this video, but I could teach you about creation itself and how everything established. But you have to have the time and patience to dedicate into learning. I can't make you do that, but I'm here when you're ready. So we'll move on. I might say a short little thing about Betty Crocker itself and why it's very important that even though these people played their role the way they should have in the universe, that Betty Crocker is not a good company to be munching down on, whether they've done good things for people in the past or not. It's time to grow up and move on from some of the stuff we did because a lot of it was wrong. So to wrap up with Betty Crocker, I just want to say, they started with the intention to help people, but the food system and the diet back then was not nearly as bad as it is now, but they were still not conscious enough to think about what we were doing to animals. So the nicest, kindest people in the world were feeding their family chopped up corpses and not thinking anything of it. And with Betty Crocker, a lot of their original recipe cards were things like ham loaf, tuna and jelly pie, hot dog fondue, and things like that. Yeah, maybe you're trying to help people, but by suggesting recipes of corpse dinners, you're not really helping anybody. We're really past that now. So even then, they did what they did. It was never right of us to be doing that, but we did, and we can't do anything about it now. But we can look at it now and see, hey, maybe we shouldn't gulp down corpses and munch down chocolate cakes, because we need to start being more responsible for ourselves and for what we're doing. We'll move on from Betty Crocker. Moving on, Little Debbie. I'm not playing on words very much here. Diabetes, debit, divots, holes in things. Little debits, little diabetes. And what are they? Snack cakes that are sweet that if you get too much, they're going to put little divots in you. Little Debbies. And they have Little Devil's Food Cake. BB is 22. Little Debbie. Now I understand they're tempting. That's the point. Do you see how this is all kind of spiritual, but it's not on purpose. It's just all there. They're the temptations that are in us. Whether people put them out there, write them in a book or not, they're in us. This is us. So you don't want Little Debbies?
You don't want little debits in yourself. You don't want little debris in yourself. You don't want little diabetes. You really don't. Those are words right in front of you saying, hey, are you sure? Are you sure? Oh, yeah? Betty Crocker, you want some of that? Have some of that too. Okay, just wait till we get into the candies. It's right in your face. And if you think it's funny, it's time to grow up and stop putting this junk in our mouths and feeding it to our loved ones. And it's not somebody who's trying to be an asshole. It's somebody who cares about the health of my society. That's what will start the change when you actually feel clear and are clear because you took care of yourself and you weren't eating junk that was telling you all along, don't eat me. Especially Doritos. Dory, the one who couldn't find her memory or didn't know where she was from? Dory. Now you identify it instead of a vital identity because she was looking for herself, her story, but it's to and from herself. She couldn't find herself. Now, to and from your identity, the ongoing reference identity plus ongoing subject. Now it's a magic word for you to want. But when you put that in you and take the word from you, it's basically saying you must be stupid. Doritos. And then Lay's, that whole company, I've put Herman Lay in an old episode. Herman, here express reference, manifest, active notion or nature, as it lie, active, vitally identified. So as it lie, active, vitally identified, that's a potato. And the here man, or the here manager, basically, his name's Herman Lay, and he made the Lay's company. Middle initials W, so plural. So he's going to do something with potatoes. Here man Lay, with a plural in the middle. Make potatoes into something. And that's what he did. Nothing against that. He was supposed to. But then Frito-Lay, take that, and Frito, yes, it could mean fry. Put that word together with a hyphen of lay, it sounds like free to be lazy. Frito-Lays. Frito-Lays around and eat potato chips. Think about how that's right in your face, and if you put it just like that, that's what it is. And you're saying it, and you're doing it, and you're eating it, and you're consuming it, and you're putting that energy out into the world. So those are words, but they're also actions now. It's crazy, but I see it, and everyone does it. They consume it, and then when they consume it, it reflects on them. And I see it, not like in proportion like Frito-Lays, Doritos. No, I think of Cheetos. Cheetos. Now you could say that, or you could say chi expressed upon itself plus ongoing subject. So if it was in you, you're going to ongoing subject. You're lazy. Yeah, the character is real cool and crazy and wild. Wow, he likes puffs that go crunch. That's great. What's that doing for you? Nothing. It's a temptation you don't want. Learn to resist, and you will rise above. Not trying to be funny. So we have Betty Crocker, we have Little Debbie, we have Frito-Lay, Cheetos, Doritos. I mean, you know you shouldn't eat those. Don't eat those. Frito-Lays. Frito-Lays around all day and eat chips. It's right there. See how it's like specific words are specific things. They all are. It's right there. And a certain company will make different products, but those different products echo the same idea. That's why when we get into the chewy gummies and stuff like that, I'm not going to spend very long on it. It's just right there in your face, like, don't do this to your children. And people do it, not only to their children, but to themselves. You should see the rate in which I see it. That's why it's in my face, because it's a very important thing to tackle as an issue. In fact, we'll move into that now. Before we move into the chewy candies and chocolates and stuff like that, I want you to know the company names behind the product names. ConAgra. Now, knowing how all these things sort of point in kind of a negative direction, thinking ConAgra means connected to agriculture. No, agriculture. ConAgra. And the other one, the company behind Little Debbie and other cakes like that, is McKee. MCKEE, of kinetic, expressed upon itself. So it's like being lazy, manifested, constant to itself, kinetic, expressed upon itself. See, McKee, snack cakes. Before I move on, I want to mention these three companies. We have Jell-O, which is JELL-O. When something's hyphenated, it means it's with that idea. So if we want something ongoing with the O, to be intense, expressed as it lay upon itself, or two L's is something centered in between it. So you have intense, expressing, something centered in between two L's, or as it lie upon itself, hyphenated, ongoing. What does Jell-O do? You pour it all together as an expression, and it's right there, laying upon itself, ongoing, wiggly jiggly Jell-O. How funny is that? They also make pudding. But the reason I wanted to come into the idea of pudding is because the proof is in the pudding, they say. Well, there's this generic brand called Kent Boringer. If you know what Kent is, the name Clark Kent of Superman, the guy who's got superpowers hidden underneath his mild-mannered man, well, Clark means unseen concept or constant to itself, as it lie, active reference kinetic. And then if you have that unseen concept as it lie, active reference kinetic, before your kinetic expressed notion plus, when he needs to, his unseen as it lie, active reference kinetic can pop out and his kinetic expressed notion can plus. Superman, Kent, means what you are able to do. Now, this company's called Kent Boringer. If you wanted to make something more boring, you would be the person considered a boringer. And if you want people's kinetic express notion plus to be more mild and just be passive, lazy people who just want to please their taste buds, you have Kent Boringer. I could go way into the dark side of all this, but just look at it. Kent Boringer. Do you want to eat something that borings your Kent? Find out what Kent means. If you don't believe me, kinetic express notion plus. Superman's last name was Kent for a damn reason, okay? Now, before we move into all the other candies, this one I just have to point out, because just listen to the name of it. And I don't care if it has cool little bear shapes, Coca-Cola bottles, unicorns, frogs, twin snakes, Haribo. Do you want to eat something that's Haribo for you? It's Haribo. Literally, it's said right there, Haribo. And if you know what Hare Krishna means, Hare Boo. See what I'm saying? It's so ridiculous. It's like saying base ongoing after Hare. Here, active, reference, identified, base ongoing. Do you want to be base ongoing as a here, active, reference, identity? Haribo. Horrible for you. Haribo. It's right in front of you, and it's not a play on words when all of the damn words say the same kind of thing. It's not, oh, you're looking for it. No, it's in your face, making fun of you, and you just aren't mature enough to see that you've got to change. It's not little kid games anymore. Since you've been acting like a little kid and someone's pointing it out to you, you're going to get a little offended. I understand. But I'm ready to raise you because everyone needs it. They know it deep down. There's problems in the world. And if you're not doing anything to change it, it's not changing. Not many people care. Most people are at the level of complaining. And that's all as far as they'll go. All right. I was getting a little carried away there, and I knew I would. Moving into the candy, this gets really offensive to me because this is what we're giving our kids. And when you understand what most of these gummies are made out of, not all of them, but most of them, are made out of boiled bones. There's a reason gelatin and skeleton rhyme, and it's not to just be funny. If you went to one of the prime versions of the word Haribo, it would say, here is a bone. Here's a bone. Because that's what it's made out of. But nobody wants to think about that. If you would say Haribo in its prime version of what it would be in a grotesque way, it would be here, active, reference, identified, base ongoing. So basically, you're taking a bone and you're doing something with it. So you can't blame people when they were using things because they were just trying to make use of every piece of it. And if you don't understand, they think it's a big delicacy or some kind of exotic thing to eat cow tongue and cow brains. Guess what? Those brains, tongues, eyes, those are all used up, minced into your Chef Boyardee stuff, and the bones are used for your jello and your broth. And in no way is that going to make you healthy. Doesn't matter what anybody says. All the creatures that came before us, before they started mowing on each other, what were the things that ate the plant life doing in order to survive? Oh, their bodies produced it because it understood how to read minerals, water, and sunlight that weren't so tarnished. Now, if we could clean up our environment, we wouldn't have any problems with the kind of fruits and vegetables and grains and those kind of plants that we can grow. But since we've been attacked from the land, the air, and the water by our own people and everyone else, all the corporations, we can't even have clean, healthy food because it's spread everywhere. We actually have to clean up the environment first. And in the meanwhile, start learning how to eat healthy because those healthier things can only get healthier if we stop polluting the environment. But if we keep polluting the environment, it's only going to get more and more unhealthy, and people are going to care less and less, and they're going to eat more chemicals and more dead crap because they don't care. As long as you dress it up with some artificial flavors, hey, they'll eat it. So I'm not going to go any more into those ones. I'm just going to move into the candies and finish this off. I wasn't sure how to tackle this because there are just so many. I just grabbed a handful to put it right in your face that If you understand that these things are made out of neurotoxins, and no level is a good level of poison to give anybody. It's never a treat. So quit thinking that. It's put in your head. It's got colorful packaging. It's got tantalizing and tempting flavors that are all chemicals. Most of it is just horrible, and not one bit of it is good for you or even half digestible. But it's still right in your face. And if you think it's funny, then you really do need to try to get a little bit more mature for your children's sake and for your own sake if you eat this stuff. Right in front of your face, just know what words mean. Dum-dums, airheads, nerds, sour dudes, rips. I mean, R-I-P-S, starburst. Do you want your star to burst? Skittles. Do you know what it means to skittle? It means to scatter around, but to identify with that. And then you have trolley or trolley. Troll, I. Nobody wants trolls. It's just to follow along either. You could say, I follow along. And it's all not a pun. It's playing with you saying, you must be out of your mind. Dum-dum, nerd, airhead, sucker. It's just, I don't understand. People know it's horrible for them and for their kids, and they can't stop doing it because it is a drug. It's just legal. And it's what sort of pulls you along and keeps you into most of the agendas. They put the characters on the foods. They connect the foods to the events and the characters and the players. It's all associated. It's all a big psychological thing, and it's not even on purpose. People know how to work with things and advertise what's hot and what's not. I get it. But what we're advertising and what's behind it, chemical, junk, horrible stuff for people. And happy, smiley people doesn't matter. Doesn't make it good for their insides or your insides. So that's when we got to start thinking. And not just having fun, kicking our heels back, riding with the top down. Oh yeah. No, it's time to grow up. That is not being sophisticated and developed. That's being spoiled. And once we see that and start helping each other out, when we see each other in shitty positions, that's when we actually become a good civilization. Can't even attempt to say that otherwise. I could have went way into the beverages and drinks, but I'm just going to use one. I'm going to leave out the pops. You already know that's horrible for you. But just think about Kool-Aid, a fake artificial drink that's just a chemical sweetener and a chemical color that you put into something. And it's spelled K-O-O-L, hyphenated with aid. Aid means to give help to or to be that active identified to and from. Aid, you're helping. And cool with a K. Notice that C is always a constant to itself thing. K is an acting from itself thing. Constant to itself, active action. There's a big difference there. So if you're constant to yourself, that's one thing. That's cool. Ongoing upon itself as it lie. If you're kinetic, actively active, ongoing upon itself as it lies, it says to help you, as in aid, you be lazy. And then the commercials are a dude smashing through the wall because the kids don't want to do anything. They just want to sit around and drink Kool-Aid. Oh, yeah. I'm not trying to put it down. I just want to put it in your face that it's always been bad for you. It's never been good for you. Just add a crap load of sugar in this packet of color and flavor, and you'll have something that seems to be a fruity flavor. Oh, boy. Come on. We've got to use our brains here and understand Kool-Aid is not a good thing at all. Sorry to say, don't mean to rain on your Kool-Aid parade, but it really is time to grow up and be mature.
Oh, no.
Boy, do I love Kool-Aid.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no.
I hate to do this, but I got to get biblical on you for 1 second. I happen to have been born last out of a family of males, and the brother that I have said in many other videos had died halfway through. The older two and the younger two was born on JC, or 10-3, the intense unseen concept or constant to itself, named Jared, spelled like the word jarred, middle name Michael. I shared a room with a brother named Michael, and I'm Daniel. If you look into the Bible that people read and base their lives off of, Michael is the angel that led the revelations, the healer, the sword, the growth, the power, the strength, that which you hold within you, the mycol, that thing that's growing within you, the micrology, but inside your spirit. Michael, seriously, I want you to look at the company that makes Mike and Ike. Just if you know any history in the entertainment field, what did Ike do to Tina? He beat her. So if you have a candy called Mike, the growth, the healing, and Ike beating the growth and healing, made by a place called Just Born in Bethlehem, PA, full of neurotoxins for your kids to gobble down. Just Born, Bethlehem, Mike and Ike. Do you think that that's just funny? Put it together in your head and realize what it's saying to you. It's saying that you're killing yourself. You're beating up your growth. Mike, growth and healing, bringing the revelation. And Ike, the guy who beat his feminine counterpart. Understand that everything is a parable. Everything. If Christ is a parable and you understand that Christ is the concept here that rises, the living energy, everything is a parable because that's what the word is. That's what I'm teaching. So that's Just Born, the company that makes Mike and Ike. Do you think you really want to eat that?
This recording was done maybe 3 or 4 months ago, and I removed it because I was trying to get this whole video out before Halloween, but I thought it was much more important to do a video about the candidates. So I put this video on hold for a while. Having that be the case, I removed a part that I thought was kind of too angry, but at the same time, there is definitely a reason to be angry. Maybe other people aren't, but I can't make people feel angry if something should actually offend them. Because if it doesn't, that just obviously means they're desensitized. And when it comes to your kids, that's why I sounded so angry in this recording. But I figured I'd dig it out of the archives that I was going to throw away because it makes a point.
Next in the candy list, we have Perfetti Van Mel. Yeah, it sounds so great because perfetti sounds like perfect, but that's not what it means. It's closer to perforate or confetti, but it's not either of those either. Potential expressed reference familiar expressed plus plus or put into place because 2 T's is 4D. Identified. Okay. And then van, once again, vital, active, notion or nature. Mel, M-E-L-L-E. Manifest, expressed, between here and here, 2 L's, expressed. If you have heard of any certain dialects or words or even breakdowns of other things, you've heard the word mal, as in malnutrition, maleficence, malfunction. When it's M-A-L, it means manifest, active, as it lies. So you want to manifest the action and be the active base of it, because L is also active base, or as it lies, or ling, when we're talking about the more inside or spiritual or unseeable parts. But if we just took the definitions from a dictionary that they give us loosely, because I'm telling you right now, the way I'm explaining the word is much deeper than you're going to get from Merriam-Webster or any other dictionary or Google. They're just translating it the way some scholar had sat and figured something out based on what other things used to say, passed down by people, not by truth, not by inner knowing, not by creation. And yes, I do know how that sounds when someone says it, but I'm being honest. So, believe it or not, just listen to what I'm saying. In the dictionary, M-A-L, the prefix, means bad, ill, maladjusted, defective, imperfect, malformation. Isn't it just a coincidence that they're perfetti, imperfect? Now put Perfetti Van Mel with an E instead of an A-L. It's E-L-L-E. Ellie is like that feminine nature, the expression as it lies upon itself expressed. That's what's being nurtured. But if you want to manifest what's being nurtured, Perfetti Van Mel, it's almost like saying put holes into, perforate, or potential expressed reference form expressing plus plus identity. So something you're going to put into something to express its plus plus identity. And it's a place that makes airheads, Mentos, all those words. Like I said, when I named off some of the major candy names, they're an insult right to you. And nobody seems to care because it's a feel-good feeling. And you have all these people at these big meetings with all these businessmen and businesswomen, and they're dressed really nice, and they're talking about how they're advancing their careers and making money, doing good and providing for their family. But you know how they're doing that? They're doing it from the weakness of people who can't say no and eat a bunch of garbage candy and basically poison themselves with a bunch of toxic dyes and toxic crap. But they're rich, and they're advancing and providing for their family off of your sickness and your dependency on crap. Then you have the CEO, who is Sylvia, Buxton. Buxton. She's only playing her role in the universe, coordinated along with everybody else with the vibration of the word and the way we act. And Sylvia is the female version of Sylvan, which means of the woods or spirit of the woods. That would be good if it was nature, but then when you say Buxton, base unit center plus ongoing notion, and she happens to be somebody who's the CEO of Perfetti Van Mel, let's nurture something that we put into you and Fetty. You could say form, force, or familiar, expressed plus identity. But then when you use a word that's closer to that word, Fetty, F-E-T-T-I, and you look at the word fetter, because I is identified, E is expressing the reference, fetter means a chain or other bond put around your ankles to restrain your movement from escape. Is that really something you want to feed your kids? I hope not. Just think of other words that are close in spelling, like fatal, fetal. Yeah, fetal. To your children. Let's give them a bunch of airheads, right? Sylvia Buxton, the spirit of the woods. Not Boxton, Buxton, as in base unit center plus ongoing notion. And yeah, Sylvia is a magical, wonderful name when it's the spirit of the woods, but other definitions translate it as lumber. Do you want to be a blockhead? Do you want to be wooded? I'm not trying to insult these people like I've said a million times, but what they're doing, for money, is insulting to the human race. And it's not okay to sit back and say, well, let people do what they want to do. No, they don't want to do it. Somebody got them addicted to it, and now they think they want to, or they can't stop. You would not believe how many people I have met that can't stop eating junk because they love it so much. Then they'll make fun of somebody who drinks a little too much or smokes a little too much. And I say, yeah, you know what? If you're eating that kind of stuff every day, you're harming yourself almost as much, if not more in some cases, than they are. So let's not sit here trying to nitpick on where this guy's bad habits are or that guy's bad habits are or this person or this woman, gender non-related. It doesn't matter what gender you are when it comes to these kind of things. You shouldn't be eating a bunch of poison, and you damn well should not be giving it to your kids. Whether they want it or not, whether their friends have it, whether there's cool commercials and fun characters on it, that does not matter. The role of a true parent, guardian, or loved one is to help their children grow up to be healthy and safe, not to be the ones poisoning them because they gave you a good advertisement.
So what is it that stops people from being a better parent? Is it because their kids' favorite character's on there? They got Paw Patrol? They got Scooby-Doo?
Or some celebrity likes it. Snoop Dogg wants you to have it. Use DoorDash and Grubhub. Go to Papa John's because Shaq's there. Yeah. Give me a break. I know those things have nothing to do with candy, but I'm just sick of watching people be misled by the celebrities they look up to for some damn reason. A gangster. A basketball player. I idolize those guys because they do jack shit for humanity. Great.
I think I've made the point, and I'm just going to move on from this one.
Because these things are a disgrace to all people who care about life, not who care about enjoying yourself for a moment or two.
I'm not going to say much about this, but just to add it to what's going on here in the candy section, we got the guys we were just talking about, one of them at least. We got Snoop Dogg doing the Grubhub commercials and all that crap. Then we got Shaq, the biggest kid in the candy store, with his own head on gummies. How freaking pathetic is that? Didn't everyone used to say don't sell out? Well, now why is everybody encouraged to sell out to the most ridiculous degree? Because Shaq, I'm sorry to say, man, you're not caring about the health of the country or the world around you. Look at the toxins in the back. You must not care. Apparently you must not know, but literally you just don't care. So I think people need to quit shacking up with dogs. How about that? Remember that this is all spiritual and has stuff to do with backgrounds and names and how people are and what their societies were like and what people craved and wanted at those times. It all will end up making sense in the end, and it all makes sense now. For instance, this one I saved for last on purpose. They tried to buy out another company for $23 billion, another snack company. Just thinking that snack companies can offer and turn down $23 billion while there are starving people, wars being waged, people barely making it by, and they're making that kind of money. That more than upsets me, and it should upset more people. The problem is they're playing right along with it, and they're feeding their kids this junk. They're eating this junk. And then they're trying to defend themselves like, oh, it doesn't hurt anything. It's no big deal. But it is. The candy is killing us slowly, not just physically, but mentally. Think of canned vital identity, but coming out from you and going in from you. How I talk about the letters and the words, things mean certain things. Candy means you can do, but you shouldn't do. Can, to and from, vital identity. Think about it. You shouldn't. Most people know they shouldn't eat candy, but for some reason, they can't resist the temptation because it's a drug. If we want our children to grow up a lot smarter than they are now, we've got to stop giving them poison from the time they're born. All the dyes and shit are not good for them. It's not okay to give it to them once in a while just because all their friends want it and because all their favorite characters are on the packages. That stuff's got to stop being what allows you to be persuaded to give your kids things or for you yourself to eat those things. You should start learning what is good for you, and then since most people already know this junk is bad, I'm more than willing to help people do that. And once your heart opens up and you care about what's really going on, not this superficial kind of love or care, but you care about your kids, not just want them to smile and want them to get out of your hair. This last one is Mondelez. There are 10 different ways you could break this one down. Just listen to the word, just like the Mandela effect, just like a mandala. Mondelez, mindless. You could say mond, as in your mind or what amounts to. Deliz. That word itself has a definition that means alongside or nearby. So that would be your mind, your ongoing mind, because it's mond, not mind, nearby. So it means it's not with you, it's nearby. And then I'm not playing with words. Look at what it says. Mondelez. They say it Mondelez, but if you just think about what a mantle is, that what covers over something, it's not a mantle, it's a mondel. And then les, like less or lose. You're losing your mind. The guy that's in charge, his name is Dirk van de Put. Remember, put is in computer. It's the last form of pater, but puter, but put. And he's D-E put. So it's Dirk, to or from the identified reference kinetic. Van, vital active notion or nature. D-E, to and from the expression potential unit plus. So yes, it was meant for him to try to do what he's doing. No shame in that. But when you cut corners and you just own a big business that within those doors, all kinds of things are going on where there's spraying of chemicals, this, that, and the other thing, everything you can think of to make a buck. And that buck is at your expense, not just talking money-wise. Who gives a damn about money? I'm talking about your mind. Who you are and what you are will never be understood by you if you don't have a mind to do it with. Mondelez, it's literally mindless. You could say mind loss. It not only looks like and sounds like, it is something that causes mind loss or mindlessness. And to be lazy, be a mound to and from the as it lies expressed from one side to the other. Nothing good about that word. And then you look at all the products they have. I'll be showing them while I'm talking, of course, but from things like Ritz to Swedish Fish to Sour Patch Kids to Belvita, I'm not giving any of these food companies credit, and I'm not trying to take away from them. But we know that these big businesses are using chemicals, are using these pesticides. They use GMOs and grow things that aren't normal, that aren't natural whatsoever. And we're feeding them to our kids and wondering why they don't feel right. Well, because they're not made out of anything natural anymore. And if you're not in control of the way you think, you're not in control of your own life, and somebody else is. These things are more than addictive. And you're setting your kids up for failure by not eating natural foods. It's not just a fad. It should be what you strive to do, to be natural, so that you can feel what your body was given to you to feel. Even the people teaching you this and that about eating these kinds of proteins or eating these kind of things, eating beef and chicken and getting enough of that, they've learned their information from other people like them who are fallible. I'm not trying to boost my own personal ego here because this has nothing to do with me. But I myself owned a 6-figure business that sold food. At first it was mostly bread, and it had a couple other things, and this was before my experience in the first place. But as soon as that happened, I wanted to get away from it. I kept telling myself that, yeah, I sell bread and buns, and maybe people don't necessarily have to put meat and animal stuff on bread, because I don't, so they could possibly do it. So I would tell myself that. But then we started selling snacks and chips. I was like, I don't want to give this to people either. And I had to get out of it somehow, But then when we were going to start selling beef sticks, I couldn't live with myself doing that. I walked away from a business that I could have thrived the way we think of thriving for the rest of my life. But I didn't, because I'm being the example of what's right to do. I'm not going to capitalize on the death and suffering of any person or animal. And yes, people are suffering due to this garbage food that we're eating, and people don't think anything about it. I apologize that my voice or the sound may change here, but like other recordings from this, I had so many that I had accidentally thrown a few out. And I was going to get rid of the whole section I did on Oreos and Sour Patch Kids because they're both Mondelez products, but each of them need to be broken down a little bit. So I'm going to throw it in here somewhere. So I apologize if the voice changes, but that's why. So Oreo, the word Oreo is a magic word. And it isn't just a coincidence that it's part of the slogan, Unlock the Magic, because the word Oreo means over and over. Ongoing, reference expressed, ongoing. O-re-o. It means over and over. And I get it. Unlock the magic. It's fun to say, it's fun to play, but you gotta understand it's garbage. Yeah, they're accidentally vegan even. Do you think that just because I don't eat animals that I eat junk? No, because I'm natural. And I stay away from everything that is unnatural, because whether we want to admit it or not, the natural world is not getting much attention, and that's causing negative things to happen. So it's important to start clearing yourself up so you can see what the natural world actually expects from you, and not in the way that we expect, in the way that things actually universally work. Another section I threw out, like I said, was Sour Patch Kids. Real quick, I think we should all know what the words sweet and sour actually mean. You can have a sour attitude. It can be a sour flavor. You can have a sweet day. You can be a sweet heart. And it can be sweet like sugar or candy. Because if sweet always meant the same thing, it would mean like when someone says sweetheart, you took a bite out of their heart. Ah! But of course, that's not what it means. The word sweet literally means whatever subject. So subject, plural, expressed upon itself, plus. So it's not only expressed upon itself, it's plus that. And it's plural. Subject, plural, expressed upon itself, plus. Now notice the word sour is the subject ongoing with one U, not a W, as a reference. So it's saying that it's just so underlying reference. So it's less than sweet. It's like the lower part, not full of peppy flavor, but some kind of flavor. A sourpuss means to subject an ongoing underlying reference. Why are you so sour? You see how that word actually means certain things. Now when we have a flower patch, let's say the word patch. P-A-T is a action reference, like pater. It's a potential active plus. Then you put a constant here. If you put a patch on your jeans, you just took some action to a constant here spot. A pat concept here. It's like putting it on, but in a fatherly active way, like patch. Of course, women put them on, or men put them on. I'm just saying commonly the old days, the woman would patch the clothes, but it doesn't have to be that way, of course. But the word patch is a fatherly word. Now just think about it when you patch something up. That's an action, okay? Now we say sour patch. We're saying not only patch as in something that covers a hole, but something that grows something like a flower patch. Because that's the placement potential or piece active plus constant to itself here. So we have a whole bunch of flowers taking action on the ground as a patch. Same way that we would put on our clothes, but it comes from where the word's being used. Now think of what Sour Patch Kids do, or just Sour Patch. The subject, ongoing, underlying reference, and now it's talking about when a human being eats it, as the reference of who you are, subject, ongoing, unit, reference, patch, potential, active, plus, constant here. And then you add kids to it, because it's all about kids. Once you do that, whether we get it or not, psychologically, those kids are going to go, ooh, I want some of those. Those are Sour Patch Kids, yay! And we're poisoning them. So yeah, I wanted to include that. And yes, it's a little more serious. But at the same time, we have to understand that in order for us to enjoy life, we've got to remove the negative. We can't just ignore it. So yeah, it's fun for all these fun shapes and fun characters to be part of our life.
but what we're doing with them and how we're being introduced to them, first of all, and then having them ingested into our bodies, being made of such foreign objects, is not cool. It's literally nothing but crap. Seriously.
It's junk. You might get colored poop. Best thing you get out of it. Woohoo, festive. Festive feces. Let's have a good time, guys. Yeah. I'm saying this and just trying to point it out and make it fun, because it's not fun to watch this, because this is actually affecting people in a not so fun way. They just don't see it. And I'm not saying it because I want to. I'm saying it because I want people to be aware. Just to have someone point it out to them, because no one else has. No one else has had their eye this open. They were more worried about themselves or getting some money or fitting in with something. And I'm not. I care about you. You don't even have to like me. I just care about you. Stop eating this junk. You don't want to eat dead chunks of you don't even know what. And you don't want to be eating toxic chemicals that aren't those real colors and aren't those real flavors and aren't those real anythings. They skittle you. They make you a dum-dum. Doritos. You know? It's not to be funny.
I'm not going to go into the pops and all that crap. You know it's doing nothing but killing you slowly. So what does it matter for someone to keep telling you over and over when you're just not going to listen until you have a reason to? I'm just hoping that you see that these are not just everyday things. These are spiritual, just like everything else. These people are in their place, doing exactly what they're supposed to do under this divine territory that you may say God or the Creator runs. It doesn't run it like some dude or a puppet master. It's the canvas that it's all playing out on. I do know what the hell I'm talking about. And if you could clear your mind and body from all the junk that you've been eating, including animals, including chemicals, then you might be able to be clear enough to actually understand what the light, what nature, what the real things in life are saying to you. And you'll understand them in your own language and be able to relay it to other people because you'll be clear. If this doesn't make sense to you, that means you're not clear. You've got to stop taking in chemicals and giving your body things that aren't natural for it. It's destroying you. It's taking away from your territory. I only wish people would care enough about themselves to hear that I'm being 100% honest, and I know these things are good for you when I talk about how we got to change your diet, because I've done it on myself, and I see how clear I am, how good I feel, and you could too. There's all kinds of different ways you can turn your diet around and do all kinds of varieties of things. But it doesn't have to be chemical, and it doesn't have to be dead animals. There's a lot of obstacles when anyone goes to try to change their life in a big way. But when you do it for other people, the environment, the animals, you have more motivation because it's not just for you anymore.
Nature gave us a menu. We've been avoiding it for a very long time. In fact, I think I might wrap it up. I have like 50 more things in a list to put on this video, but I don't want to make this video forever long. Like I said in the beginning, I could have made a series out of this, but I'm not going to. I think you guys can see the point. Share this with your family and friends. People need to think about what they're eating and what it really means, whether they're religious or not. It doesn't matter. This is someone who inside their living heart and soul, their spirit, their Christ essence that you have in you as well. I care about what is real, and I myself have gone through the trials and errors to see what feels right and doesn't feel right. And I also know what's right or wrong to do to other people and other things. I've gone through the trial and error for my health to see how that feels, to know whether or not we can live on a certain kind of diet. And we can, and it is great, and the food is delicious. So it's not really even a sacrifice. It's just a change. And if people can get ready for that and then do it, we'd have a world where everyone's taking care of themselves and doesn't need anybody to give them handouts. Imagine that. Do you think anybody wants that for you? And deep down, do you think that's possible? I know it is. And I want to help other people learn how to do it. And along with other people, get better at doing it so I can actually teach it and do it all the time for free. That would mean I'm just doing it. I'm just living. I'm with people. What do you need? That's what our contacts and our communications should be for. That's what everything should be for. Helping each other in times of need. But if we don't have some outside directive, can we start being self-directed in big groups of people? That's one of the obstacles we need to overcome. If something were to happen and everyone was trying to get along, where would be the directives? And who would say yes, no? Maybe we could learn how to work on that kind of stuff. But we're far from that. Right now, let's work on it from the inside. and eat something better than we have been eating. I know I've been doing it for years, and I'm hoping that other people ask questions. I can give you all kinds of ideas for stuff to eat. It's simple. It's not the hardest thing in the world, but it's also not going to be something that you have flashy gourmet menu, but it is a lot of fun. And some of it does take time, and it's time for you to spend with your food and connect with it and be part of the life that you are in a deeper way. That's how I celebrate the life that I have. And that's how I celebrate the life that I share with you. So hopefully you can find it in your heart to share this with other people and start putting it into practice in your own life and thinking about what you eat, because that ends up reflecting on you, in you and out in the world. So until next time, that's the Foodstuffs. I hope that was enough. I'll probably have a part 2, but I might just leave it at that. Either way, peace and God bless.